Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching us from. On behalf of the Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement and the Water Policy Center, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished chair, Dr. Bishnu Raj Upreti, speakers and participants who have registered for the event. We're so glad that you could join us today at the NICE WPS International Conference on the post-pandemic world order, navigating the new normal. Throughout the 3-day conference, we are having 30 sessions taking place on 2 Zoom rooms simultaneously. We have around 150 experts and speakers joining us from 30 different countries who will be delivering their presentations and sharing their expertise with us. This is the 15th session of the conference. To chair and moderate this session, we have with us Dr. Bishnu Raj Upreti here with us. Dr. Bishnu Raj Upreti holds a PhD in conflict management and MSc on knowledge systems management from the Wageningen University, Netherlands, and MA in sociology from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. He has worked as a research fellow at the King's College, University of London, and the Centre for Environmental Strategies, University of Surrey, UK. In the 40 years of experience in the field of development from 1980 to 1996 and in research from 1996 to date, he has served as the South Asia coordinator of a global research program called the NCCR North-South, and as a senior researcher focusing on state building, peace and unconventional security, governance, and North-South research partnership. Dr. Upreti was a regular visiting scholar in different US and European universities and research centers. His teaching and research is mainly focused on social and public policy, conflict management, and state building related issues. He has written and co-edited nearly 6 books, published frequently in international peer-reviewed journals, and extensively contributed chapters and anthologies and edited volumes. He is widely quoted in national and international media. Without any further ado, let me now request Dr. Bishnu to please chair the session. Sir, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Rangali. Thank you very much for the introduction. On the behalf of organizer and myself, I would like to welcome you all, the speaker and the participant. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. So it was my privilege to chair this session, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to listen to you and learn from the various interesting presentation, which are quite close to my area of research as well. So I am looking forward to hear from you and learn from your rich experiences. As Pramodji earlier said, there is a very strict rule for the speaker. Precisely in 15 minutes you have to stop. So that will be your great cooperation to the organizer because of the time constraint. They have another session. So that means quite logical will be to start closing around 12 minutes. So in 3 minutes you can conclude. And I will be able to warn you if you are not. Can you hear me? Something is wrong. It's okay. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're properly audible. Someone just tried to share the screen.
Okay, thank you. So we have 4 speakers today, and 1 hour of the presentation of the 4, and the remaining time we will have for the discussion. I will go with the logical order given to me, starting with Dr. Sujit, Kumar, Datta, and then Jumel, then Asma, and then Nishu. So that will be the order, and I request Dr. Datta to present. Please be strict for 15 minutes. Datta, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Do you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. First, Firstly, let me thank the organizer, Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement and Water Policy Center, India, who inviting me here. Special thanks to Dr. Pramod Jaisal, Research Director NICE, for his outstanding efforts to add such an academic conference and continuous communication and support. Thanks to panel chair, Dr. Bishnu Upreti, and co-panelists of this session who are renowned in their academic career. Today's international webinar on post-pandemic world order, navigating new normal. Today, I am going to talk on China and India in South Asia, a transformative relationship, especially 1988 to 2020. South Asia is a word used to denote the southern part of the Asian continent, which comprise the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, especially SAARC countries. The steady growth of China and rising India defines the Asian century with corresponding impact on their domestic landscape and affecting the regional and global order. China has for centuries maintained connections with South Asian nations, and Chinese travelers had written widely about the region. China shares its boundary to 5 South Asian states, and there are a geographical link with mountains and rivers with South Asian countries. India is the largest and most powerful country in South Asia, which wants to lead the whole South Asia region. But most of South Asian countries want to make good relations with China for their economic and security cooperation. For that reason, there is an unofficial conflict, cooperation, as well as competition between China and India in the context of South Asian politics. Significance of my research. South Asian small countries want to take advantage of these two Asian giants, China and India's competition situation. China always tried to cooperate in the area of economic side. Now China invested a lot of money in South Asian region to cooperate different types of mega projects. Besides this, growing Chinese effect in South Asia region is a major concern issue for India. The main significance areas of the study of this are below. First one, lack of capability of Indian government. Though India is the biggest state in South Asian region, but India government tried to be regional supremacy. But still, India is facing a lot of problems like poverty, lack of health facilities, as well as housing with her huge population. Chinese perspective on South Asia. On the perspective of China to South Asia is traditional and military security dimension, especially on border problems, trade, Belt and Road Initiative, water sharing, the risks of fundamentalism in the form of terrorism, climate change, and disaster management. China wants to ensure her investment in South Asian region. Indian perspective on South Asia. The best important area of Chinese foreign policy is not interfere other countries' domestic affairs, but India always irritated to effect the growth of South Asian countries' internal party political condition and to cover the collaborations among China and other South Asian countries. India more specifically was not happy about China's rising influence in other South Asian countries, which India saw as its traditional sphere of influence in that region. Chinese and Indian maritime approach. Chinese maritime approach is more significantly for the strategy implications and regional development in South Asian region. China will become an ultimate maritime influence in the 21st century. On the other hand, India expressed that it understood and respected China's interest in that region, including the structure of naval supply port in Gwadar in China, in Pakistan, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, as well as China's participation in safeguarding maritime security in that region for joint strikes against piracy and terrorists to implement strings of pearl strategy of China. So I have 3 specific questions for the purpose of the research. The main purpose of the research to explain how and why China-India relations have been transformed from 1988 to 2020, featuring the mixture of competition and cooperation in the South Asian context. Second one, the proposed policy-oriented ideas in order to suggest how geopolitical competition between China and India in South Asian region can manage change. And finally, to identify the factors to transform Sino-Indian relationship in South Asian region from 1988 to 2020. So, in the case, I have divided the transformation of Sino-Indian relationship in South Asia in the 5 categories. The first one, in 1988, Rajiv Gandhi paid a historical visit to China despite opposition from the media and several Congress party members. The first stage was the recovery period, and they start from 1988 to 1998. India's Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's 1988 visits, the first since Jawaharlal Nehru's visit in 1954, was considered to be a historic, a turning point, a major breakthrough, and the starting point of reapproachment of Sino-Indian relationship. The second stage is frozen period, and that starts from 1988 to 2030. In May 1988, India conducted 5 nuclear tests and brought international attention and concern to the subcontinent, which transformed Sino-Indian relationship in South Asia. In May 12, 1998, Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee wrote a letter to US President Bill Clinton after the nuclear weapons test by India. He referred to China in the letter as posing threats to India. After that, Chinese reaction was very strong. The third stage is escalation period, and it starts from 2003 to 2013. For the duration of Prime Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee's visit to China in 2003, reciprocal concerns are made on Tibet and Sikkim. Sino-Indian reapproachment also took this form and mutual concerns. Thus, India recognized Tibet as an autonomous region within the People's Republic of China, which was the endorsed of its one Chinese policy, whereas previously India only accepted Tibet as an autonomous region of China. Mutually, China changed its positions on Sikkim from the independent state of the Indian state. Such as territorial concerns or recognitions of mutual legitimate interest. Number 4 stage, cooperative period, and it starts from 2013 to 2017. There was a 15 days military standoff for the last 2 decades in the border area of Ladakh, which China called Aksichin in 2013. Although it was peacefully resolved through the flag meeting and diplomacy when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh visited in China in 2013. The incident was due to the absence of mutually agreed flag, leading to an increase of mistrust. Hence, both states still feel threatened by the enhancing military build-ups. Such military and infrastructure competition, generating mutual distrust and insecurity, has resulted in the concerns of relative gains of both states. And final stage was critical strategic period, and it starts from 2017 to 2020. After the diplomatic standoff, President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the hometown diplomacy with a great approach to promote bilateral relations. The bilateral relations were experienced great unrest due to the confrontations of Doklam in 2017. However, in September 2017, the leaders of the 2 countries decided to move forward and open a new chapter of bilateral relations. In April 2018, Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi attended the first historical information meeting. Subsequently, the 2 leaders held 3 meetings and 3 Chinese state councillors traveled to India. China-India relations are further upgraded with the path of rapid development except Ladakh in 2020. So I'm now discussing the factors which transform the Sino-Indian relationship in South Asian regions. Sino-Indian transformative relationships in South Asian regions have become increasingly complex in the last few years. Though bilateral trade and cooperation has been growing, relations have been increasingly strained by mutual distrust and irregular discourse. In general, Sino-Indian relations are influenced by the following factors. The first one, historical legacy. China and India shared a number of similarities like its geography, nature, and common anti-colonial sentiment. Both take pride in their historical past as an ancient civilization and aspire to great power status. Both have nuclear weapons, fast growing economy, and currently rising power. Despite their many similarities, the geographical proximity to each other has certainly created friction. The second one, economy. Economy has been main driving force to transform Sino-Indian relationship in South Asia. Economic interactions between China and India have been institutionalized to a large extent in the context of South Asian region. Third one, soft power. Soft power is a part of cultural relations, which may a major factor to transform Sino-Indian relationship in South Asia. The concept of using soft power has been known to China and India since the ancient history and dates back to their philosopher strategic Lao Tzu or Kautilya respectively. Basically, Chinese and India's soft power can come from three primary sources, and these are countries' cultures, countries' political values, and countries' foreign policy. And fourth one, Indian nuclear test in 1998. In May 1998, India conducted 5 nuclear tests in deserts, which one of the most important factors to transform Sino-Indian relationship in South Asia. In the letter to US President Clinton, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee openly linked India's official nuclearization to a threat from China. Doklam standoff is one of the most important crises between the China and India in the 21st century. On 16th June 2017, Chinese troops with construction vehicles and road building equipment began extending and the existing road southward of the Dukala area of the Doklam Plateau. On 28 August 2017, Indian and Chinese troops agreed to free of ending of 73-day standoff. Ladakh crisis in 2020. The 2020 China-India battles are part of ongoing military standoff between two states. Since 5th May 2020, Chinese and Indian troops have engaged in aggressive face-offs and battles locations along the Sino-Indian border, including near the disputed Panong Lake in Ladakh. The future challenges of Sino-Indian relationship in South Asia. The first one, political consensus has not been translated into political reality. The second is the political and economic and trade investment still has not been more expressed. People-to-people connection still is very weak. And finally, third-party issues and historical legacies continue to interfere with relations between the two countries during this period. And policy recommendation for the Sino-Indian transformative relationship, China and India should solve the boundary issue and take Sino-Indian relationship to a new height. Eliminate negative impact from third-party factors by remaining strategically determined. China and India to transform their financial model with international trade policy. China and India must express their misperceptions and mistakes on their strategically involved in South Asia. The leaders of the two states ought to have the foresight and create outside of the safety prism. China and India should realize their own mutual interest and benefit and to enlarge trade to South Asian countries, which is unequally insufficient. And finally, I want to say, Sino-Indian transformative relationship in South Asia from 1988 to 2020 equal competition plus cooperation minus confrontation. The buzzword like competitive cooperation and competition plus cooperation between China and India are away from ground reality. I will finish my talk in the only for the just two quotations from the President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. President Xi Jinping told, Chinese dragon and Indian elephant should join each other in a duet, not a duel. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, when India and China work together, 1 plus 1 is not 2, but 11. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Sujit, for very precise and punctual in time. I hope the other colleagues following Sujit will also follow the same trend. It was excellent. Very succinctly, you presented the transformative process between these two countries' relations, and the end quotation is quite important. So I will call Jumel Gabilan Estrañero. She is the research analyst and the desk officer in the President Office and senior lecturer from Philippines. Jumel, please.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
it's clear.
Okay. First, what is more clear? This one or this one? This one or without headphone?
With the, whatever you prefer, we can hear you clearly.
Okay,
so
okay,
it's up to you.
Okay, I'll be sharing my screen right now. Okay, can you hear?
Yes,
Can you see my screen?
it's coming.
Can you see my screen?
The screen is coming. We can see it.
I can
Go ahead.
actually see right now. It says that my screen sharing is being posted.
Is it? Here it is clear, I'm seeing, but I don't know what next I have to do.
Please,
You are,
Jumel, yes, click screen 2, just 1 and 2, you just click that.
go to the second slide. It's the
Press,
blank slide. Go to
yes,
the second.
press the
Okay.
mouse.
How about this one? How about this one?
Yes, we can
Yes,
see.
now it's
Perfect.
working. Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Pramod Jaiswal, for this wonderful opportunity to be part of this wonderful session. Today in this international conference, I'll be discussing about the traditional and non-traditional security threats, global and regional threats in post-COVID-19 era, which is of course pertaining to the trade supply chain dynamics. Okay, so this is going to be the outline of my presentation: the traditional and non-traditional security threats, then the COVID-19 in global and regional context, the risk factor, the implications like the power shifts, paradigm shifting in trade supply chain, and the dynamics, and of course the analysis assessment down to the recommendation, conclusion, and the way ahead. So first, let's discuss what is traditional and non-traditional security threats. Okay, I do not know why some of the image do not appear. Can you see the photo between traditional and non-traditional?
No image.
No image?
No.
What happened?
Don't worry, just continue.
Okay. For the traditional and non-traditional, okay, when back then in the end of Cold War and the rise of globalization, it has actually changed the concept of national security among the nations. And as a consequence, the non-traditional security issues are gaining the limelight against the traditional security issues. In this discussion, for example, I'll be discussing about traditional and non-traditional securities faced by global commons in the face of COVID-19, its challenges, at the same time, the probable remedies. Now, based on the photo, although it's not actually working right now. Additionally, is said to be the hard notions of security. These deal with conventional issues which most involve violence or destruction that pose a threat to nations. And moreover, as Professor Meli Caballero Anthony said, as a Secretary General of the Consortium on Non-Traditional and Security Studies in Asia, he said that these are defined as challenges to the survival and the well-being of peoples and the states. On the other hand, on traditional security threats, those threats which are emanated by the non-state actors, these are challenges to the survival of the state and well-being of people that arise primarily out of the non-military sources such as climate change and of course this COVID-19 that is ravaging a lot of states right now, cross-border environmental degradations, and of course resource depletion in infectious diseases. Okay. Unfortunately, there's no images that you can see right now, but this particular background of the image with this yellow moving dots, uh, it talks about the level of permeability that's actually evolved. So the features actually of most global and regional risks that we are experiencing are said to be non-military by nature. Second, it's transnational. Third, it's transmitted rapidly due to the globalization and of course communication revolution. In this case, we have COVID-19, which is spreading out like a bioterrorist from one place to another. Okay, and then of course we have COVID-19 and in global and regional context, the risk factor, it actually ravages the global environment, the change in the economy decrease, and of course the global health. Okay, so let's go with this. Okay, at least this one is more I guess this one has no image. Okay, so this COVID-19 actually projects this typical power shifting, paradigm shifting, and of course trade supply chain dynamics. One of the implications is, of course, is actually a test of globalization, nationalism. The third one is leadership, credibility. And while we are talking about political and diplomatic, it's like in the past few days, we have heard that one of the tests of leadership and credibility right now is what happened in Japan. For example, Shinzo Abe or the Prime Minister of Japan actually resigned 2 days ago, and people are having two thoughts of that. First is they are lauding this kind of effort of the president of the prime minister, but on the other hand, people are doubting why he had to resign or he had to go down of his post. And of course, the fourth one is a test of universal healthcare implementation, both in social and security and international domestic policy. The fifth would be the economic factor, and of course, the future direction. Okay, so with this, I'm very sad that you can see this data, but in this particular graph, I'm actually showing that there's a particular unprecedented collapse occurring right now in the first half of 2020. In fact, even last year, we have been experiencing some sort of GDP or gross domestic collapse with a constant price between 2019 Q4 and 2020 per percent. But this data for China referred to the change in between 2019 is of course quite different with what other states are experiencing. Okay. Now, there's another one. Here's another graph that you are not actually seeing, but it keeps a trade in essential medical supplies flowing means removing barriers such as tariffs, for example, in trade that actually affecting some medical goods essential for combating COVID-19. Like, for example, several countries maintain tariffs of up to 10% on COVID test kits. Okay, it means expediting certification procedures to allow new products to be traded as soon as possible, ensuring the technical requirements being said to be science-based and do not unnecessarily restrict trade. Finally, it means enhanced trade facilitation to keep goods moving as quickly as possible, including identifying key actions needed to ensure smooth customs procedures with limited human interventions. Okay? And of course, there are particular issues with like food supply chains, food loss and waste, appropriate biosecurity arrangements, okay, being produced based on the sanitary and phytosanitary or the SPS requirements based and unnecessarily restricted. Now let's go with the impacts, okay, of 19. So technically we have food supply chains, the flights, shipping ports, shipping containers, footwear, and the variety of trade processes have been affected by this pandemic. Okay, for example, in the footwear, okay, um, I remember the World Footwear Experts Panel. They have gathered specialists from all over the world, and they believe that the COVID-19 crisis will result in a rethinking. I have to reiterate that rethinking of the supply chain and the way it is organized. I mean, during the month of March, we have recalled that we have conducted the second, or we have seen the second edition of the World Footwear Business, and we have seen that there is a question whether the panel members of COVID-19 likely impact on firms' medium-term decisions regarding the locations or the relocations, for example, of some brands of shoes like Nike, Adidas, etc., of the footwear productions. But technically, more generally, all supply chains are being affected um, to ensure or by the need or by the necessity to ensure additional health and safety measures, which actually being a factor for the cost and time. Now let's go with the COVID-19. Oh, sorry. Implication of power shift, uh, paradigm shifting in trade supply chains in growth in growth development, for example, in Asia, it is expected to stall at 0% in 2020. It's, it is worst growth performance in almost 60 years. If we will be trying to assess the past 60 years, including during the global financial crisis, which gave us 4.7% in the Asian financial crisis with 1.2%. So that said, Asia still looks to fare better than other regions in terms of the activity. Here in this particular slide, I'm actually showing the impact of COVID-19 in the US presidential race, wherein, of course, it discussed the effects that the current crisis has had in President Trump's chances for re-election on November 3 ballot, as well as the electoral prospects for likely Democrat nominee Joseph Biden and the rest of the candidates. Okay, now let's go with this. Okay, I have to tell you that while China is experiencing some kind of blessing from other states that they can buy masks or surgical masks with China, there's of course a potential gap for China in terms of the global supply chains. Apparently, it's very soon after the city of Wuhan in other parts of Hubei province that they actually announced stringent quarantine. And later on, this kind of anti-sentiment from other states like US, which became contagious in the Asia Pacific and Indo-Pacific, had actually affected the production of China, or its, for example, its export products going abroad. Now, however, on the other hand, I have to tell you that China's security activism is actually coupled with maritime brazen operations. And since January until June, and of course last month of July incidents, it actually provides a challenge in the power and paradigm shift of ASEAN and US in terms on how they have how they position themselves in the in this issue of multilateral means, while China prefers the bilateral negotiations. So in other words, China has always opted for one-on-one talks to manage tensions without external forces to meddle in between. Okay, but of course, for us Filipinos here, we want to resolve this by rule of law, and of course the multilateral approach among ASEAN states and the Philippines being supported by Australia, Japan, US, and other middle powers and dominant powers. Okay, so next, let's go to the analysis. I guess last 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so operationally, since the ECQ or the enhanced community quarantine or the modified enhanced quarantine and the general quarantine, there is of course the suspension of a lot of mobility and transports, causing a lot of delays in logistics among other things. For example, economically, it costs Filipinos and other ASEAN member states.
Jumel, you have to finish in 2 minutes, okay?
Okay, yes, sir. Okay. So it actually affect in terms of handling the viral outbreak, the challenges for us like non-traditional security. It actually accelerated the diversion of manufacturing of foreign direct investment away from China to Southeast Asia. Okay, and of course there's an effect in the cybersecurity in terms of data, the ransomware, and of course the awareness and culture of cybersecurity being manned by people across the world. Now, in terms of the recommendations, I have at least like 5 to 7. So we have to counter-check informations. We have to strengthen our treatment or the medical approach in solving the COVID-19. Leadership, we have to update our policy and strategy. At the same time, a comprehensive and coordinated policy response, not only within the state, but of course, interstate. 4 things we have to do. We have to boost confidence in trade. Of course, that's a very example for us to maintain the power and confidence among states, keep supply chains flowing, avoid making things worse, and of course, even to miss surprises, we have to think beyond the immediate. So we have to conclude right now, okay? So it's not about the human security alone, but of course, the issue of trade and commerce, which is actually a lifeblood for the people to live, it's also important. So it could be devastating, but of course, we have to protect our external and internal borderlines. Okay, politics is still a major role in decision-making in trade policy. For example, the way it is being perceived by other states and its people inside. State and people's interests must also be balanced in every case. So I guess there's a question whether this Russian Sputnik vaccine would be a game changer, but of course, if Moderna would be able to counter this so-called vaccine from Russia, then it could affect the trade. Okay, and of course, there must be a consideration of power shift that is quite unfolding in the bilateral and multilateral alliances among states. At the same time, maintaining the trade among nations must continue for us to maintain the workforce, the organizational priorities, and of course to mitigate the threats among states, while putting a premium consideration of the cyber attacks in the new normal and the IT infrastructure. So with that, I'm very thankful, and this presentation is being ended. Thank you so much, sir. I'm done with my presentation. Hello? Hello, Dr. Fred.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Asma.
Okay.
So please, Asma, you have also the 15 minutes. You just take that time. She's from the Washington. Very much looking forward to hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to clear that I am Islamabad-based researcher right now, currently visiting fellow at with South Asian Voices. With this, I am thankful to NICE for invitation and providing me an opportunity to be to present my thoughts on COVID-19, traditional and non-traditional security threats. My presentation is divided into three portions. At first, I will explain the overview, global and regional overview of pandemic era. Secondly, its socio-economic impact on India, Pakistan, and its implication on strategic landscape of South Asia. COVID-19 pandemic has posed serious risks to the entire global, regional, and national security framework. Also, economic and political instability, more focus on military security, inefficient and ineffective governance, as well as poor healthcare facilities have identified the incoherence and operational shortcomings of healthcare system to tackle the health crisis. The global pandemic of coronavirus disease or COVID-19 has triggered economic crisis and shaken the social and economic foundation of states across the world, including Southern Asian region. South Asia's security landscape is confronted with varieties of traditional and non-traditional security challenges. Two major regional states, India and Pakistan's bilateral relations are punctuated complex due to historic conflicts. Amid the hostile ties and complex regional security dynamics, the conventional concept of security had gained more prominence in national security framework of both countries. Since the COVID-19 crisis, it is to widen the concept of security and focus on both the traditional and non-traditional security threats to achieve the national security goals. Countries in the South Asia were viewed highly vulnerable to pandemic outbreak for two reasons. First, public health structure of states are struggling hard due to limited resources. Second, the population density made the regional countries potential hotspot for rapid spread of infection. Now heading towards the socio-economic impact of the pandemic on India, Pakistan. The spread of COVID-19 has impacted billions of lives across the South Asia. In India, the high new cases have resulted in economic collapse with 4.5% decrease in GDP in 2020. The unemployment rate increased to 27.1% in previous months during the lockdown measures. Additionally, natural disasters such as floods in various regions of India have further inflicted massive loss of life, property, access to health services, and food. While COVID-19 cases are increasing in India rapidly, meanwhile, Pakistan managed to flatten the curve, but the pandemic has resulted in economic fallout, pressure on health sector has increased, agriculture sector of Pakistan has severely impacted, and decline in economic growth is witnessed. IMF projected in June 2020 that Pakistan's GDP growth is expected to slow by 3%. According to World Health Organization, both India and Pakistan spend low expenditure on health sector. According to India's National Health Profile data, India spent 1.28% of its GDP on public health services, whereas Pakistan spends only 1.1% of its GDP as expenditure on public health. These statistics and socio-economic impact of pandemic like COVID demonstrate that now non-traditional security challenges need more attention to their emergence as strong threat to modern economies, well-being of peoples and societies. The current global crisis has forced the states to rethink their national security and articulate a broader security framework based on traditional and non-traditional security elements of national power. Now heading towards the strategic landscape of South Asia in the wake of pandemic. Though the non-traditional security gained attention of policymakers in the wake of COVID-19, but regional security landscape of South Asia is likely to remain unchanged. South Asian nuclear weapon states, India, Pakistan, are intervened in traditional security competition due to history of military confrontations. Conventional and nuclear development in one country is matter of concern for others. Due to number of dynamics such as territorial conflicts, asymmetries, modernization of conventional and strategic forces, the military security has remained focus of policymakers of South Asian region. The bitterness over Kashmir between India and Pakistan and ongoing ceasefire violation along the line of control has intensified the tensions between both states. Strategic and security competition remain dominant in South Asia despite the escalating socio-economic challenges. The South Asian strategic environment can also be viewed through the prism of triangular ties between China, India, and Pakistan at regional level. In May 2020, a crisis occurred between China and India along the line of actual control in Himalayas during the pandemic, which has triggered due to India's which has triggered due to India's concentration of road in area claimed by China. During the China-India standoff of 2020, India's policymaker allies tried to theorize the possibility of true front war while referring triangular strategic equation between China, India, and Pakistan. From India's perspective, the threat from China emerges due to unresolved border issues and increasing China-Pakistan strategic relations. China, however, views India's threat perception as self-fulfilling prophecy driven by India's domestic politics and its aspirations to become great power. India's claim that China and Pakistan may engage in any conflict against India, such theories were considered baseless by Pakistan security analysts. Meanwhile, other issues in the region, such as India-Nepal border conflict and Nepal's protest against disregarding its sovereignty and increasing tension in South Asian states due to recent developments such as Citizenship Amendment Act and NRC. Such developments during the pandemic demonstrate that strategic competition and geopolitical rivalries among Southern Asian states has remained a dominant factor affecting the regional security dynamics even during the escalating human security challenges. In the backdrop of recent border crisis, in July 2020, India received the first batch of Rafale aircrafts and aiming to purchase Hammer missiles from France on emergency basis. Its security planners are focused to enhance operational preparedness of Indian armed forces to counter the perceived threat. India's defense budget has maintained growth momentum. Defense budget for fiscal year present 15.49% of total central government expenditure. Meanwhile, Pakistan defense allocation for current fiscal year shows an increase in its defense budget. Additionally, Pakistan's policymakers remain concerned about India's growing military spending and military modernization, as well as its quest for acquiring state-of-art weapons. In response, Pakistan is also focusing to acquire advanced military technologies to address this gap and maintain deterrence against India. Thus, regional security dynamics and hostile nature of India-Pakistan relations could further induce security dilemma between New Delhi and Islamabad and may increase the risk of arms race in South Asia. India's determination to modernize its strategic and conventional forces in its competition with Pakistan and to achieve regional political objectives might create asymmetries within the force structure of South Asian states. Due to competitive geostrategic landscape, the regional states will remain focused to address their traditional security dilemmas in future, and prospects of human security initiatives are narrow in the region despite the growing pandemic crisis. The COVID-19 crisis will not be able to bring much shift in political and strategic thinking of South Asian states. Well, now heading to its key policy takeaways in prevailing security situation could be that the complex pandemic requires complex solutions. With the outbreak of pandemic, a new security challenge emerged that has evolved the health crisis into economic crisis in developing as well as developed states. In emerging security dynamics, a comprehensive defense mechanism is essential for state survival, but human security also demands attention. As during the pandemic, during pandemic era has not only identified existing gaps in health security capacities against public health risks, Heavy economic and political losses compels policymakers to review their national security priorities and formulate comprehensive security framework based on both traditional and non-traditional security paradigms to secure a sustainable future. Thank you. Here I will stop.
Thank you, Asma. You presented very complex issue within given time. Still, two more minutes was there, but you saved that. So now, in total, time is equal. Excellent for your very insightful presentation and the security tension in South Asia. Without delay, I will request Nishu Sharma, postdoc fellow in JNU, to present. Nishu, please.
All, thank you so much, Upreti sir. Without wasting any time, I would like to start my presentation with title of my presentation is Redefining Non-Traditional Threats Post-COVID-19 Discourse. Basically, what is security? Security is in that when people feel secure in their country, when there is no threat, when we feel safe at our home. So when sovereignty, political independence, and what we can say that territorial integrity, when these are the fundamental values, and when these fundamental values are attacked, that means there is threat to our security. So the new phase, a new aspect of non-traditional security, which emanates from internal issues affecting a country, such as terrorism, migration, human rights, climate change, and so on. The non-traditional approach is stateless, boundaryless, they have no respect for borders, and non-military origin. Non-traditional threat is the upcoming threat of the present context. Basically, we have always talked about the traditional threat, which means the military. But people or the international community has always overlooked the non-traditional threat. Now there is a need, because this pandemic has caused numerous destruction, has caused huge destruction to the entire society. So there is need to read, there is need to analyze more over this non-traditional security threats. The widespread of the COVID-19 has exposed the frailties of all democracy, and it has exposed the weakness and unpreparedness of all the countries in terms of health and social security system. The inevitable unleash of the virus from China has brought the world on the verge of revisiting Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilization. More than a confrontation between the West and China, it is now a clash of system and values. So apart from wreaking havoc all across the globe, the COVID pandemic has exposed several other key security risks, and most important being is health security. Another traditional security aspect we can talk about, which highlighted during this COVID-19, is a severe economic repercussion on the global order. The world is moving through a period of negative growth, something that has not been seen in the past few years. In fact, the Global Economic Prospect paper published by the World Bank in June 2020 stated that the emerging markets in the developing countries are the most vulnerable to the financial crisis, and nearly 60 million people are expected to be pushed into extreme poverty in a post-COVID world. Not even that, the UN report also suggests that a shrink of nearly $8.5 trillion of global output could send 130 million people into extreme poverty and leave us several unemployed. In fact, the economies like the US, UK, Italy, Japan, they have been facing the brunt of several global recession. While many governments have opted for a phased lockdown or partial lockdown model to tackle the health-related issues associated with the outbreak, they have failed to implement public policy to curtail other risks associated with it. That has resulted in a new air security dilemma. In fact, COVID-19 has brought with this economic crisis in the form of increased market volatility. This created an atmosphere of public agitation against the government, mass protest, and activism. International trade is also at a still affecting all the export-oriented economies around the globe. This will also have the geopolitical consequences, particularly for US and China relationship that can be seen in the geopolitical rivalry between the two has intensified. The COVID has increased the dependency on cyberspace as the software applications such as Google Meet, Skype, and Zoom gain in popularity. And this gain has been noticeably triggered by the idea of working from home due to the conversion of physical from education to online learning module. But we can say that the private data has already been breached in the Zoom. So there is no security. When we talk about security, there is no security even in those kind of software applications. So there is a need to look into this. See, the others of this threat would be more damaging for the world. The COVID-19 has obviously it has caused huge destruction to the entire world. What are the consequences of the COVID-19 on the developing world would be the most dangerous. Uh, it is a population density, lack of medical, and more importantly, economic vulnerability of handle such threats for a prolonged time of time. People of these of states, nation states, they are economically weak, and most of the population is the daily wage earner. So they will face economic and food security challenge as well. Now the thing is that what should be the measure, what we can do to avoid, or what we can be the measures to avoid this dilemma. We have to develop and implement more holistic concepts for the security. The pandemic has proven that gains in security as the absence of conflict is not enough. Non-traditional security analysts must come up with a more succinct analysis of public health security systems, especially the global dividing standards. COVID-19 increases states and international organizations' demands to update their risk assessment coming from human threats that should be supported by responsibility actions and reflected in national response plan, political guidelines, and strategies. Now, the thing is, what would be the strategic implications of this COVID-19? Looking into the impact, there would be so much effect on the international system. The pandemic challenges our current notion of power. Most great power will experience slower economic growth as a result of COVID-19. That could diminish their level of ambition and military footprints in the zone of their interest, as well as will reduce their power projection to zone of their influence. The post-COVID-19 world might compel national leaders to reassess priorities between the traditional and non-traditional security paradigms. It calls to make livelihood a top security imperative. The importance of multilateral cooperation cannot be overemphasized. We have to keep multilateral cooperation concept in the mind regarding the COVID and after this era, because this pandemic is not a regional concept. It is a worldwide challenge. So we have to combat this challenge altogether. So there is a need to be more multilateral. And now moving towards to a new normal world, we need a change in mindset of national and global political and military leaders in reframing the new security paradigms. The support to resuscitate the economy after the pandemic should promote health, equity, and environmental protection. We must recognize that restoring climate stability is our ultimate security. The globalized world that we live in today is more vulnerable to infectious disease such as COVID-19 due to increasing trade, population density, migration, human displacement, climate change, and deforestation. Therefore, it is essential for states to counter non-traditional security threats because they can potentially reduce national resilience of states to prosper. As the threat more and more assumes features of statelessness, transnational and military origin, it becomes clear that security and insecurity both are global affairs and the response must be global. Therefore, COVID-19 has ravaged the international system and the only way out now is self-reliance, regional integration and cooperation. And now I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nishu. You were so precise and you very eloquently presented this security challenges. Excellent. Now, all the four speakers, they have completed their presentation, and I think the floor is open for the discussion. There are few questions coming and some emerging. We may also discuss the issue right now. If someone has the concern, please write one question directly. I see for Sujit. India often accused Nepal, Bangladesh or Sri Lanka of living towards China while engaging on economic issue, but itself have the deep economic engagement with China. How do you look at it? Sujit, that is the question someone asked to you.
Thank you, Professor. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Actually, India has enjoyed substantial regional influence across the whole South Asia because of its size, comparative economic might, and historical and cultural relevance of the regions. On the other hand, China's historical involvement in South Asia is limited comparison, though its long-standing ties with Pakistan are a notable exception. But over the past decade, China has become the significant economic partner to the countries throughout the region, pursuing particularly strong ties with the smaller states through the trade, diplomacy, aid, and investment. But when, like Bangladesh, Nepal, or Sri Lanka are very close to China, is very tension for the India. In the recent, there is a significant show in economic diplomacy in South Asia. China has announced tariff exemptions of the 97% of export for Bangladesh. And the diplomatic sources of Bangladesh have described the Chinese moves and major success in Dhaka-Beijing relationship. That time, India's paper and India's daily newspaper are published is very negatively. So when China is very close to Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and other small countries, but it's more tensionable for India because of they don't like to the close to these countries. But in my presentation, I highlighted that India may be the big states in the case of geography, big populations, but he has not so capabilities like the money, because India herself is facing lots of problems like poverty, lack of sanitation, health facilities, even the housings. Almost 20% people are living below the under poverty line. So it's very tough for her to look forward to economic support to other countries. For that reason, South Asian small states like Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and other states are looking the economic support from the China. So when we are going to the China, India is not looking it very positively, and they are always show it in very negative sides. And the recent example is the Bangladesh, because when Bangladesh got 97% export from the duty free, Indian papers are highlighted it very negatively. So it's very tough to assess. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sujit, for your concise response. There is another question to anyone, any of you, perhaps first to the Asma. What is your view in the biggest hurdle in improving the relation between India and Pakistan, and are there any prospect of improvement in ties between the two states? And perhaps this is also same to Asma. Do you think China contributes to India-Pak rivalry, or it's create the avenues for cooperation between the two countries? Please, Asma.
Thank you. Heading towards the first question, like what are the biggest hurdles? I believe biggest hurdle between India and Pakistan is the Kashmir conflict. And right now it's after August 5 abrogation of Article 370 and Article 35A has completely the bilateral relations has completely destroyed. So I believe that Kashmir conflict is the biggest hurdle, and secondly, the human rights violation is right now the key concern which has Pakistan presented on international forum and trying to highlight even in United Nations. I believe until and unless the Kashmir conflict is not resolved, there are no prospects of cooperation and any kind of dialogue between the both states. Sorry, what was the second question?
Do you think China contributes to Indo-Pak rivalry, or it creates the avenue for cooperation between the two states?
I believe China's role within the region China could play a significant role to to normalize the relation between India and Pakistan. But right now, the rivalry between China and India is not more focused due to the way it is perceived in India, like it is the strong Pakistan and China strategic ties are perceived in India and theorized as the key reason for India-China rivalry. I believe India's recent Indo-Pacific strategy and India's development in that military development in that region is the key reason which is inducing rivalries and tension and border conflict, which is inducing tension between the states. So those are China can play a significant role, but there are very narrow prospects that the China might, because the prevailing regional dynamics shows very narrow prospect of China's role to playing a role of mediator between the both states. Because China itself right now has the tension between the relations of both states is increasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma. Nishu, if you have any comment or observation on the same issue, like the China contributes to India-Pakistan rivalry, or it creates the avenue for cooperation, if you have any observation on that?
Sir, I think that...
Yes, sir. Please,
Nishu, go ahead. And then
Yes, sir,
Sujit, you will
Sujit,
come
sir.
next.
Okay.
Nishu first and then Sujit.
Okay, sir, I think that what that Asma was talking about, China-Pakistan relation playing a much higher role in this pandemic, because it is not that India is perceiving India-China relation in a different way. It is what it is in reality that India says, and India talk about China and Pakistan relationship. It is not only that India is perceiving, that is a reality what is going on. China is backing Pakistan and Pakistan is totally relying upon the China. So if there is no mislead, or they are the facts, and the role which China has played in pandemic, it is known to everybody. So you can cloud this fact that there is no reality about India-China collaboration in this, and their effects on India and the views of India is quite different from the other world. No, whatever India perceive is based on the facts and based on the reality. So we must go to the statics and we must go to the data. Then we should talk about all these things. And as far as the pandemic is concerned, we totally consider China as a sole responsible for this pandemic, and India has done very much well to overcome this pandemic. And I don't think that Pakistan has done much as Pakistan and China has a very good friendship, and they share very much same feelings. I don't think that China has come out with more measures to help in this era to bring Pakistan from this pandemic, where India solely has done so much for its country, for its people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nishu. Dr. Sujit Datta, do you have any observation on that?
Yes, I just want to concern about the second questions actually. So China contributes to India-Pakistan rivalry or not? So I agree. Sometimes I agree because if we consider the South SARC inactiveness and more active of BIMSTEC, as well as the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and Belt and Road Initiative. Actually, this feature can make the show the China may contribute some India-Pakistan rivalry, and it never want to India-Pakistan friendship like that, because it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma to counter India, and it's a dilemma to enter South Asian politics of China. So I think this question is further okay, and I believe China sometimes contributes China-Pakistan rivalry in some cases. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sujit. Now, the
Hi, sir. Excuse me. Can I speak?
yes, you
Yeah,
can.
yes. Okay, sir. By the way, I'm Jumel again, sir. No, well, although it's not my niche, okay, because I'm just after the South China Sea, terrorism, of course, the ASEAN and the Asia Pacific or the Indo-Pacific. But I believe with this question, in relation with China and Pakistan, at the same time with my further readings about China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, it may actually enhance cooperation with the Afghan government in support of the Afghan-led or the Afghan-owned peace reconciliation process that actually launched an intra-Afghan negotiation at an early date, supporting the preservation of the gains since 2001. On the other hand, Afghanistan and Pakistan agreed to further strengthen dialogue and work for continuous improvement of so-called bilateral relations, including through, for example, the so-called Afghanistan-Pakistan Action Plan for Peace and Solidarity, or APAPPS. Okay, that's going to be very challenging on the part of China. China will continue, but at the same time, China will continue to play a constructive role in improving, for example, Pakistan's relations and Afghanistan-Pakistan relations that they are trying to maintain. So, in other words, these are, for example, sides that we can concur, that we can return to the Afghan peace and reconciliation process, underlined vis-a-vis this COVID-19 as engaging role in the international community for a time-bound and well-resourced roadmap for the return of these refugees to their homeland with dignity and honor. I'm talking about here the security dilemma that, of course, China and Pakistan is trying to at least post in this post-COVID-19. They urge, for example, a responsible and condition-based withdrawal of foreign troops, but they're trying, of course, to avoid potential insurgency. So I guess it's also important to at least consider how to carry out trilateral practical cooperations with the flexing muscles, keep exploring new fields of cooperations between China and Pakistan. But at the same time, Pakistan, India, for example, has to be careful the way China posts its muscles in the international community that may actually accumulate and gain power in the geopolitics. Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you, Jamel, for your great contribution. Well, I have one common question, though the question from the general audience is not there. I have one common question to all of you, because the whole four presentation gave the scenario that we will be facing different challenges, complication, and all that. So that is the reality. In that complex circumstances, do you envision any sort of the regional collaboration or cooperation or concerted action that can address these challenges at the regional level, because the conflict, tension, they are the one reality, but we can't live always with that. So how we can minimize, what could be the potential mechanism, whether the existing mechanism like SARC will be able to continue or not, or do you envision any possible new institutional arrangement that can bring all together? Because many young scholars, young researchers, you are envisioning the thing differently than what the establishment thinks. So can you reflect, all of you, the prospect, the positive side, the possibility of working together, collaborating together, and addressing the challenges you raised here together?
May I answer, for example?
Please,
May I
yes,
answer,
go
sir?
ahead.
I believe
Yes.
one of the positive thing that we can see here in terms of the cooperations, while there's competition, of course, it's that it can actually open a room for us to continue so-called targeted measures. I guess that's one thing that we have to do to establish a unified convergence mechanism that could actually target measures to control the spread of this epidemic or this pandemic, particularly in the resurgence portion. And it may actually stop cross-border transmission. That's very important because in the state-to-state relationship, the cross-border transmission is actually possible. An anti-China sentiment, but of course, we still have to see China as member of the League of Nations that may actually provide support and assistance according to the needs of other systems. For example, Pakistan. In fact, before, I believe that China and Pakistan held the first meeting under the joint COVID-19 response cooperation, I guess in the early July, okay, according to the Chinese Foreign Ministry. And I believe that this may actually, and of course, number three, rather, we have to promote personal exchanges and economic and trade. That's number three, economic and trade cooperation. On the premise, of course, that it has to be effective. It has to be effective mode of engaging with these states vis-a-vis an effective quarantine measures. And it has to be a good host to each other, for example, nationals, students, and smooth progress of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. So after the outbreak, for example, we can demonstrate support and solidarity for China's effort, but at the same time, maintaining the security of India, Pakistan, Nepal to combat the coronavirus with its sovereignty. So Pakistan, Nepal, and India has also to mobilize the entire country to provide material or logistics supply in terms of assisting other states, not only United States and China, but of course other states like Australia, Japan, for example, if they are doing vaccines, okay? And last but not the least, we have to stand together as a community, hoping that every side will take the establishment of this mechanism, of those three mechanisms, as an opportunity to further join forces against COVID-19 and defeat the virus as an early date as possible, hopefully. Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you, Sujit.
Yes, actually, for the cooperation, firstly, India should avoid the big brother attitude to the small countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, etc. And on the other hand, we can say that Modi's neighborhood first policy seems to be a status of the now locked border discourse with the three of its neighbors, including the traditional plan Nepal also. So New Delhi and Kathmandu are engaged in what experts have called the Kargil War. There is no questions about the fact that India neighborhood policy in the few of the years has been completely failure. So even Bangladesh has issues with India after how ruling party leaders have been going to taking about the Bangladeshi immigrants to India on the issue of NRC and CA issue. So I think we are facing very tight situations at this point. On the other hand, the major power of the region, China, in against of India, and on the other hand, smaller neighbors which have been traditionally very friendly to India are also negatively disposed to India. So firstly, India should avoid the big brother attitude, and secondly, India should more attractive to the India's first neighborhood policy. They should respect their neighbors, not the big brother attitude like that. Thank you, sir.
Could you highlight what can be the possible ways to have the collaboration among the South Asian countries, and what institutional arrangement may work, and how we have to move ahead in a cooperation instead of conflict?
Yes, definitely, sir. There is, in the phase of pandemic, there is need to work together. We should keep aside our small interest and our small issues. We should keep aside in this phase, and we should all nations should come together to fight this menace. As Dr. Datta said, India should stop playing big brother role. It is not about playing big brother role. India has a big heart, basically. So we always come, for any contingency, India is always there to help. It is not about the small nation or big nation. India has a big heart, and India is always ready to help any nation who is in need. So at this phase where India is fighting very well, India is doing very well, where other countries in comparison to India are not doing at that level. India is willing to help them if there is need to do, and we have never said that, India never stated that we are not going to cooperate. India is always open to help all the nations, and if there is any need, we are always every country is always welcome. India is ready to give hand them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nishu. Asma, you have any suggestions, observation?
Yes, sir, sure. Sir, I believe that keeping in mind the existing strategic landscape of South Asia, especially after the Pulwama Rajouri airstrike, and then after that in abrogation of Article 370, and then Pakistan's continuous calls before that for negotiation to discuss bilateral dispute, which were not responded positively by New Delhi. So I believe that, and then after other political developments within India with this Citizenship Amendment Acts and its dispute with Nepal, our map. So these dynamics present at the due to the emerging political India's political dynamics and its policies towards regional states shows that the prospects of cooperation between India, especially the two major powers, India and Pakistan, are very slim. But in meanwhile, I think activation of confidence building measures can play an effective role so that they could discuss the issues and try to resolve the bilateral disputes, because when there will be no discussion, how issue will be resolved. Secondly, there should be the basic reason of the conflict should be stabilized, like Kashmir conflict. Whenever when there would be any kind of unilateral decision regarding Indian occupied Kashmir, it will obviously increase tension between the two main regional states, India and Pakistan. So we need to stabilize the basic reason of conflict, which is Kashmir, and should not take unilateral decision. Any state should not take any unilateral decisions like abrogation of Article 370 or 35A. Secondly, yes, CBMs, I think CBMs right now in prevailing situation, confidence building measure can play only role to normalize the situation within the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma. Thank you for your perspective, all the speaker. It was so excellent. There are no other questions. So perhaps we have to stop here until and unless if there is any burning issue anyone to share, you are most welcome. Otherwise, I will thank all of you for your excellent sharing, presentation, and also for the organizer. They did very well in such a difficult time. It was quite a successful conference. All of us were able to share, interact with each other. So this is a very close community. I guess those who are interested in this non-conventional security issue, security in the region, that is the professional scholarly group working in future too. So I hope this group will be intact and sharing and learning more in the future as well. The young, very young scholars, you have the real future in this world. And also because the South Asia, our generation is always faced with the tension, conflict, all that. And your generation, you have to change that. There is we need to learn from the Jumel side of the world, because the Southeast Asia
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
better than South Asia. But South Asia, we
Yes, sir.
have
Yes, sir.
also
Yes, sir.
great culture, great tradition. We have also the great leaders. So hope there will be cooperation. But as Asma clearly said, confidence building measure, mutual respect and trust are quite important. And country can be smaller in population or geography, but it all are equal in its sovereignty. So if we want to improve, we have to start right from there. And if we start with mutual respect to each other, then it will definitely do. And I hope this type of the interaction, this type of the sharing are quite important. We have to promote the all possible ways of collaboration and cooperation, working in a concerted way, working together, instead of creating the tension, instead of fueling the conflict, because the region is volatile. Everybody of us know it is quite sensitive. It's a highly nuclearized zone. It is highly militarized zone. It is a highly volatile zone because of the poverty, inequality, marginalization, exclusion, all that. These are the big gleam side of the reality. But still, we have also the very bright side. We have this big number of population. We have the young folk looking for the bright future. We have the common tradition, common culture. At least we have to capitalize that. We have the hope, and young generation, particularly young scholar, need to research, need to develop the knowledge and skill that will help to work together, to come together, to sort out the problem mutually in a peaceful way, and to strengthen the coexistence of each of the small or big nations. So my wish to all of you, particularly almost all you are presenting seems younger and very prosperous, and you have the great future. Our future is in your hand. You work hard, you develop the new knowledge, you disseminate the new knowledge, you convince to the leaders who want the confrontation to go for the collaboration. So collaboration is the only way. It will only bring to the win-win situation. Otherwise, confrontation will bring into the win and lose situation, whether it is Indo-Pak tension or whether it is a tension with other countries. So our wish, our hope, and our work should and must be to force the possible area of collaboration and working together. With that, I thank you for your very insightful presentation, and I hope we will see each other somewhere, sometime, and thanks to the organizer as well.
Yes. By the way, sir and ma'ams, okay, like Miss Asma, Khalid, Dr. Upreti, Dr. Datta, if you want to go here in the Philippines, I'll be willing to welcome you here in the Philippines.
Thank you very much for your offer. Definitely this group is concerned with this area. So wherever this type of the interaction are, people will appear one way or their way. When I was looking, Sujit is traveling here and there to present thing, and others are doing the same. So if you come to Nepal, you are always welcome. If you come to other country, they will welcome you as well. South Asia, in Southeast Asia, I have worked several collaborators in Myanmar, in Laos, in Thailand. So I have a relatively good understanding of that region, and the humbleness of the people of that area and food we all enjoy. So we will definitely come, and once we come, we will contact you, Jumel. Thank you for your offer.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Rangoli,
Are
Yes,
there
sir.
any
please.
organized? Oh, Dr. Saab came. Okay, Dr. Saab, we finished our session. So, mic to hand over to you.
Thank you, sir. Rangoli.
Yes, sir, I'll go ahead. Distinguished Chair, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of the session, I take great honor in proposing the vote of thanks on behalf of NICE to all those who have graced us with their presence and contributed their parts to make this event a resounding success. We would like to express our profuse gratitude and sincere thanks to Dr. Bishnu Raj Upreti for agreeing to chair and moderate today's session. Our sincere thanks also goes to all the speakers for being a part of the event and delivering such a comprehensive and clear to our friends from the diplomatic community, experts. Finally, I must also mention our deep sense of appreciation for the audience who participated in the webinar